Welcome to another wonderful Susannah Calloway audiobook. We are excited to have you with us. Before we begin the story, please like and subscribe to our channel and share it with friends. This allows us to continue adding free clean Western romance audiobooks for you to enjoy. The following title is copyrighted by Susannah Calloway, Western romance author. Now, find a comfortable spot, relax, and enjoy the story. The Fraudulent Fiancée. Chapter 1. Roxie trotted down the steps of her house, lifting her skirts above her ankles in order to not trip over her petticoats. Her spirits high, she felt as though she had just been let out of school. Except school was years in her past. Instead, this fine day she was going to visit her best friend, Ella. The sun was high, the temperature was mild on this early spring day, and she was going riding with Ella. Just the two of them, and she sincerely hoped she could be of help to her dear friend. She tossed her auburn hair in its thick braid from her shoulder to her back, fairly dancing toward the large structure behind the house. The sound of hammers ringing on anvils and the heat from the fires in her father's forges emanated from the huge open doors. She hesitated as she observed Mr. Hannity, the local constable, standing nearby. He saw her approach, and smiled, tipping his hat. "Greetings to you, Miss Mills," he said in his soft drawl. One might equate his mild manner and quiet voice with weakness. But many a man who made that mistake found themselves on the meaner side of his temperament and the wrong end of the pistol he wore at his hip. Roxie returned his smile, as she had always liked him, and offered a brief curtsy. "Mr. Hannity. A pleasure to see you." Her father glanced up from Mr. Hannity's dapple-gray gelding's near front hoof clasped between his knees. With sharp nails clenched in his teeth, a small hammer and the shoe ready, his brow rose inquiringly. "Pa, I'm in need of firefoot. I'm going riding with Ella. How is poor Mrs. Bennet?" Mr. Hannity asked, sympathy clear on his ruddy face. "Such a shame about young Mr. Bennet. Gone well before his time." Roxie offered a heartfelt shrug. "Not well, sir. She's still grieving terribly." "It is good she has your support, miss." Roxie shied away from the constable's praise. "We've been friends since, well, forever. Best friends. Of course, I want to be there for her." The man nodded, his expression kind. "Not all folks have any sense of duty, much less loyalty, Miss Mills." Around the horseshoe nails in his teeth, Bronson Mills said laconically, "Chores?" "All finished, Pa." He nodded acceptance and putting a nail to the shoe, hammered it deftly into the gray's hoof. The beast sighed down its nose. Stoking the fire of the forge with a bellows, Sam Evans, her father's apprentice, met her glance and smiled. She returned it, feeling a chill of pleasure run through her. Sam made little secret that he wanted to marry her, and thus far, her parents hadn't made any objections. Roxie liked the tall, broad-shouldered young man with a thick thatch of curly black hair on his head and lively brown eyes. She thought him handsome, and when her father spoke of him, which wasn't often, he praised the boy highly. Not quite understanding Mr. Hannity's comment about duty, she merely nodded to him graciously and darted into the cool dim recesses of the barn. Firefoot nickered to her in welcome, a small, sturdy black and white pinto mare who belonged to the family, though it was Roxie who rode her the most. Despite the grand name, Firefoot lacked any sort of fire in her spirit, but still, she was Roxie's best friend. Outside of Ella, of course. After kissing the mare on her soft nose, Roxie quickly saddled and bridled her, then led her from the barn. Her pa had finished with the gelding's front hooves and now clasped a lax rear foot between his knees. Mr. Hannity watched the procedure while telling Bronson about having to arrest Tad Wilson for public intoxication. "Bye, Pa." Roxie mounted swiftly and bent to push her skirts and petticoats down, keeping her legs covered properly. "I'll be home for supper." Her father grunted without looking up, and Mr. Hannity waved. Taking Firefoot down the short lane at a walk, she urged the mare into a lope once she reached the road. Ella lived a few miles west of town on a small farm her husband had taken her to when they had married. Roxie waved to neighbors she passed, stout matrons in skirts and bonnets hanging up the wash to dry in the sun, small children playing hoops in the dusty lane, a farmer or two on buckboard wagons drawn by draft horse teams on their way to town. Ella promised to meet her halfway, and after riding about 20 minutes, alternating between cantering and walking, Roxie saw Ella on her glossy black gelding. Urging Firefoot into a run, she hollered, waving, to get Ella's attention. Yet, oddly, Ella didn't race to meet her as she usually did. As Roxie drew closer, she noticed Ella didn't seem to see her at all. The black snorted as she reined her mare in and sidled away. At the horse's movement, Ella nearly fell off. "Ella? Are you all right?" Ella, a pretty, fair-complexioned girl with dark brown hair and huge eyes, lifted her tear-stained face toward her friend. She held a lace kerchief against her mouth, choked sobs emerging from behind it. "What's wrong?" Roxie reined Firefoot around beside the black and reached over in an attempt to give Ella a hug. "What's happened?" Sobbing harder, Ella could barely make herself understood. "Martin's brother," she uttered, "sent me a telegram. He's coming to claim the farm. His family, too. I have nowhere to go." Roxie sank back in her saddle, stunned. "He's turning you out?" Ella nodded, still crying. "I have no right to the property," he says. "He says that under the law, I can't claim it as mine. Unmarried women cannot own property. That's not right. Besides, you're a widow, not unmarried," Roxie snapped. "He can't throw you into the street." Controlling her sobs, Ella wiped her damp face. "Yes, he can. And he will. He'll take everything, even Dash here." She rubbed her hand over the gelding's black mane, her face awash with misery and tears. "But Martin gave Dash to you," Roxie all but shouted. "No one can take him away." "I have nowhere to go, Roxie," Ella said. "When Martin got killed in that hunting accident, I thought that was the worst that could happen. Now, I know better." "It can't be," Roxie said, feeling helpless and angry. "We'll think of something." "Oh, Roxie, I miss him so much." Ella lapsed into a fresh storm of weeping, her kerchief soaked. Roxie tried to console her friend as best she could, but she wanted to cry herself. How could God be so cruel? First, Ella lost her beloved husband in a senseless accident, and now she stood to lose her home. What would become of her? While Roxie knew her parents would take Ella in, it would be only a temporary solution at best. Ella had no family to rely on, as her parents turned their backs on her when she married Martin, whom they had deemed worthless. Now, they lived 2 states away and not a word had passed between them in months. "Come," Roxie said, making her tone as stern as she could. "Stop this. We're here to ride. I promise, we'll think of something." Chapter 2. I Want to Die. The soft words wrung Roxie's heart. The death of Martin cast Ella into such a deep, heartfelt grieving that Roxie feared Ella would never climb out of it. Now the loss of her home and having nowhere to go, plus no prospects for a future, had sent her into a pit of depression and despair deeper than anything before. Ever since Roxie learned of Ella's brother-in-law's plan to evict her and take the farm from her, she had spent every day she could with her friend. She sweet-talked, cajoled, and teased her to no avail. If she wasn't crying, Ella sat in her favorite armchair and stared blankly at the wall. Nothing Roxie did or said made any difference. "Of course, you don't want to die," Roxie pleaded. "What would I do without you?" Ella didn't reply. Over the last week, she ate only when Roxie sat her at the table and forced her to eat. She refused to clean her house, or herself, and both had begun to smell. Her hair hung in lank, oily tendrils that clung to her neck, and the bodice of her gown held tear stains. Roxie did her best to care for the animals on the place, feeding the chickens, the horse, and the cows. She hoed the garden and brought in firewood. Exhausted from doing not only her own chores at home but Ella's as well, Roxie wondered how long she could keep this up. "I know you loved Martin," she said, her voice careful. Anything could set Ella off into wails of despair. "But you will find another man to marry. You can find love again." Ella's head rolled slowly from side to side. "No. I won't. Roxie put her hand over Ella's cold one as it sat listless in her lap. Roxie had prepared her hot tea in a mug, but Ella hadn't even tasted it. Cold now, it sat on the small carved oak table that Martin had crafted. Everything in the farmhouse had been built or made by Martin, from the house itself and the big fieldstone fireplace, down to the furnishings. The cups and dishes were a wedding present from Martin's mother, and the oil paintings hanging on the solid oak walls were created by Martin's sister. Roxie half wondered if perhaps her in-laws would take in their former daughter-in-law, but what they had done for the couple, they had done for Martin. Not Ella. You will, honey. I believe you will. Ella sighed deeply, tears rolling once more down her stained cheeks. All I ever wanted was a husband, a home, and children. Now, all I want is death. No, no, please don't talk like that. Roxie felt her own tears rising at the pain in her friend's voice. Please, listen to me. Your life isn't over. You should go now, Roxie. Ella's voice held no animation, no spirit. She didn't look up from her lap. I need to be alone. Her fear rising, Roxie stood back. You're not going to do anything foolish, are you? Dying is easy, Ella intoned, her voice dull. It's living that's so hard. Oh, Ella. Will you be back tomorrow? For a moment, Roxie felt hope that Ella found their friendship worth living for, something that held her to this earth. Of course, I shall, if you want me to. Yes, was all Ella said. Bending, Roxie kissed her friend's cheek. All right, then. I will come tomorrow. Try to sleep. I will. Roxie rode Firefoot home through the setting of the sun, its golden mass sinking behind the Appalachians in the dim distance in a riot of blues, pinks, purples, and oranges. She held the mare to a walk, needing time to think and pray. Surely, God had taken Martin for a reason. She just hoped that God didn't want Ella, too. Chapter 3. 2 days later, Roxie galloped Firefoot nearly the entire way to Ella's house. By the time they arrived late in the day, Firefoot's neck and chest foamed with sweat and she blew hard through her nostrils. Roxie knew she would have to walk the mare down before tying her to the hitching post and offering her water, only adding time before she could talk to Ella, but her conscientiousness wouldn't allow her to neglect it. Ella, she called, reining the mare in at the farmhouse. Ella, can you come out here? Roxie bit her lip in worry when Ella neither answered nor appeared. She would never let a hot horse stand, inviting colic or founder, thus she clenched her fists and walked Firefoot until the horse felt cool to her touch. Promising water in a few minutes, Roxie tied her to the post and hurried into the house. She half expected to find Ella dead by her own hand and braced herself. But Ella sat in her usual chair staring at the wall. She failed to acknowledge Roxie's presence. The stench in the house had intensified, and Roxie wrinkled her nose. Ella? Roxie knelt by the chair. Listen to me, sweetheart. I think I have an answer for you. What answer? Ella's tone held little curiosity. Roxie knew that if her news didn't bring Ella out of her depression, nothing would, and her best friend would be lost to her. Her throat thickened at the thought. You can have a new family, Ella, she said hurriedly. In Wyoming territory. That brought Ella's head and attention up. What? Wyoming, Roxie went on, her voice eager. Start a new life, a new home, a new future. Let Martin's brother have this place, you won't need it. Your dreams can still come true. How? Look here. Roxie unfolded a piece of paper she had pinned inside her pocket so she wouldn't lose it. It's an advertisement for mail-order brides. Ella actually sat up. Mail-order brides? That sounds preposterous. What does that mean? Out west, Roxie said, handing her the paper. Men go west to make their fortunes, and towns get built. But they don't have wives to raise a family. So they ask for brides from the east to go west and marry them. Ella scanned the paper 3 times, her mouth open. They marry anyone? Yes, I think so. What's Wyoming like? I have no idea. But I'm sure it's a great place to live if so many men are going there. Ella actually stood up and paced around, showing the first signs of life since Martin's untimely death. But no one can take Martin's place in my heart. She paused and swallowed. Will he love me, Roxie? For a moment, Roxie found no words to say. Being married to a stranger certainly didn't equate with being loved. Ella had been blessed once to find a man who loved her unconditionally. Children would have followed in due course. But would a new husband love her as much as Martin had? I would hope so, Roxie replied carefully. How could anyone not love you? Ella scowled. Plenty of people. She looked again at the paper she still grasped. I have no other options, Roxie. Her face screwed up in a grimace and then she took a deep breath. But, Martin. Martin would want you happy. He'd want you taken care of. But I miss him so much. I know you do, honey. But Martin would want you set up in life. Ella looked at her through teary eyes. You honestly think he'd want me to do this? Roxie swallowed. If Ella didn't do this, Roxie saw no other chance for her. Not now, at least. She touched Ella's arm. I think he would. Her voice was soft. Ella bit her lips together and looked at the paper once again. But I miss him. I know. I miss him so much. I know. Ella wiped her eyes and nodded. She sucked in a long breath. I will do it. God help me, I will do it. Roxie went faint with relief and hugged Ella. You will do well out there, Ella. I can feel it. Ella squared her shoulders. I will go under one condition. Roxie stood back, puzzled and a little wary. What condition? That you go with me. That we do this together. It was Roxie's turn to sag into the chair. But, I'm hoping to marry Sam. My father has been talking to him. Ella knelt beside her, clasping her hands, tears again filling her eyes. I'm not brave like you, Roxie. I can't do this unless you're with me. If I go alone, I won't make it. I can't do this alone. Please. But. You're the only one I have in this world. Please, Roxie. Roxie looked at her friend. She loved Ella like a sister, but her plea wasn't fair. Didn't Ella realize that Roxie had dreams for her own life? But still, could she truly desert her friend in such an hour of need? Ella. Hope filled Ella's dark eyes. You'll do it? You'll come with me? Roxie's mind whirled. Perhaps, if she got Ella settled out west, she could return and begin a courtship with Sam. Would that be possible? She studied Ella, who was showing the first signs of interest in anything since the tragedy. Without thinking further, she uttered, yes. I will go with you. Leaning close, Ella kissed Roxie's cheek. Thank you, dearest friend. Numb, Roxie rose from the chair. I must go tell my parents. They won't be pleased. A look of regret passed over Ella's face, but she didn't give voice to it. Instead, she said, I'm sorry, Roxie, but I need you. Roxie hugged her then went outside to give Firefoot water. Ella walked out onto the porch behind her. It was the first time she'd been out of the house in days. Roxie took that as a further sign that she needed to do this, whatever the cost. Firefoot drank thirstily. The sweat had dried on her black and white coat, and she looked ready to run the entire way home. Will you be back tomorrow? Roxie nodded. Start your letter to the agency in the advert, and we'll take them to the postmaster tomorrow. She mounted her horse and reined her away, but Ella's quiet voice halted her. Roxie, she said. You're saving my life. You know that, don't you? Roxie raised a smile. Then it's worth it. Chapter 4. Absolutely not. Bronson Mills, normally a man who spoke little and raised his voice even less, thundered from his place at the head of the supper table. Roxie cringed while her little sisters, Betty and Joyce, sat wide-eyed with their forks halfway to their mouths. Her mother Patricia, as soft-spoken as her husband, closed her eyes. Her lips moved as though she were praying. Roxie met her father's gaze firmly, yet without defiance. She knew what she had to do. "I have to do this, Pa. Ella can certainly go west without you," he went on, his tone less harsh. "Sam is a very good man and will make you a fine husband. I would be proud to call him my son. And you will." Now the entire family stared at her, her mother's eyes opening wide. Roxie tried not to smile, for she hurt inside. She hated deceit in any form, and being forced into it due to circumstances didn't help. What she planned might very well be wrong in the eyes of God. Silently, she pleaded for help and mercy. "I'll go west with Ella," she said. "I'll see her married and happy, settled into her new life. Then I will come home and marry Sam." "And what about lying to Ella?" her mother demanded. "And the man you proposed to marry in Wyoming? What you plan is trickery, plain and simple." Roxie bowed her head. "I know. But if it saves Ella, then I must do it. However misguided. I will pray for God's forgiveness." "And Ella's?" Roxie nodded. "Hers most of all. The trip itself is dangerous," Bronson said. "You might both be killed. We will travel by railroad. It's much safer than by stage." "I heard there were wild Indians out west," Betty chimed in. "What if you get scalped?" Her 10-year-old voice sounded entranced by the idea. "If you get scalped, can I have your room?" Joyce asked. Roxie tried to wither them both with a glare. "I will be fine." Bronson frowned. "We don't know that's true. Newspapers report attacks from the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Kansas." "Roxie, I know you care for Ella, but this is madness." "Madness to want to save her? Then consider me mad, Pa." Her father opened his mouth to argue, but Roxie interrupted. "I'm an adult now. I have my own money. It's my decision to make, and I'm going. I will be back as soon as I can." "Headstrong," her mother muttered and sniffed. "Putting yourself in danger, and for what? Just to see Ella married? Why can't she find a nice husband here in West Virginia? Can Ella live here until she does?" Roxie asked, keeping the sting out of her words. Both her parents glanced at each other and then studied their dinners. Roxie nodded. "We don't have room. Ella's brother-in-law will be here to claim the property next week. Ella has no one in the world except me. She has to do this, and I need to help her." Bronson cut a piece of his meat, put it into his mouth and chewed thoughtfully. "You'll come back?" "Yes, Pa." "And marry Sam?" "Yes." He said nothing for long minutes as the family resumed eating in uncomfortable silence. Roxie, too, cut and chewed her mother's delicious roast, but her stomach churned with anxiety. While she was indeed an adult and could make her own decisions, she wanted her parents' blessing on this. Just as she hated deceit and lies, she also despised the notion of not obeying her parents. Her father finally nodded. "Very well. A month should see Ella married and you back home. I will agree to this." Relief flooded Roxie. "Thank you. When do you leave?" Roxie knew her mother now accepted the situation once her father made his decision. She had never gone against her husband in anything during all the years of their marriage. Bronson's word was law. "The train arrives in 3 days," Roxie answered. "And Ella wants to give you dash, Pa. Before Martin's brother comes to claim him along with everything else." "That is a very nice horse," Bronson remarked, "but I will buy him for $20. I will not have it said that I cheated a widow." Roxie nodded. "He is gentle enough for Betty to ride. I'll take the horse when you both get on the train. I will pay her then, and she can write me a bill of sale. While you pack, the girls and I will prepare extra food for the two of you," Patricia offered, rising from the table. "You will need it for the journey." Despite the lump in her throat at the prospect of being away from her family, wonder rose within Roxie's heart. She was to travel by train through parts of the country she had never seen before, and she was to meet new people. It would be an adventure, and one that promised a considerable amount of excitement. Chapter 5. Their bags packed with clothing and mementos, and with boxes filled with fried chicken, cooked slices of beef, ham as well as hard cheese, bread and apples, Roxie and Ella stood at the train station with Roxie's family. Ella had bathed and washed her hair, though her pale pink dress hung on her from the weight she'd lost. Yet, she smiled and the light of hope filled her blue eyes. Roxie's heart filled with joy at the sight of it. Ella passed Dash's reins to Bronson and handed him a paper that informed any who read it that she legally sold the gelding to him. In his turn, he gave her $20. Betty and Joy stroked the horse's silken nose as Patricia fussed at Roxie's clothing. "I know you will take good care of Dash, Mr. Mills," Ella said, putting the money in her small handbag. Bronson merely nodded, inspecting the animal. Ella took her bags down from the saddle's horn and cantle and set them on the wooden planks of the station's walk. She also set down a gunny sack that was obviously heavy by the way she struggled with it. "I want you to have this, Mrs. Mills," she said to Patricia. "In here are paintings, my fine silverware, and a few pieces of wrapped crystal and perfume Martin bought me." Patricia gasped. "Surely you should take them with you, dear." Ella smiled, shaking her head. "I'm needing a fresh start, ma'am. I cannot do that by dragging the past with me." Patricia embraced her. "I will pray you find what you seek, my dear." As the train rumbled into sight, smoke billowing from its stacks, Roxie hugged her mother and sisters, tears streaming down her cheeks. She felt as though she were leaving permanently, and not just for a month. She kissed her father's cheek as he smiled down at her. "Mind your manners," was all he said. In a rush of hissing steam and the squeak of wheels, the train halted beside them, its piercing whistle announcing to all who heard that it had arrived. The station master came out of the small building as the crew came down from the locomotive. The conductor and master engaged in talk of schedules and rail lines, while men in coveralls and caps, smelling of smoke, helped Roxie and Ella carry their bags aboard and stow them. With final tear-filled goodbyes, Roxie and Ella climbed into the third car. Choosing a set of empty seats midway down the aisle, they peered through the dusty windows. Waving wildly, with tears flowing as they waved, Roxie watched as her family turned to depart for home. "I can't watch them any longer." "Why not?" Ella took her hand. "If I do, then I'll never see them again." "That's a superstition," Ella said, smiling. "Of course, you'll see them again. Perhaps they can come out to visit us and meet our new husbands. They will want to meet their grandchildren." Her innocent comments sparked Roxie's guilt at her deceit, but still, she refused to watch her family disappear into the distance. "Perhaps," was all she murmured. The car held only a few passengers, an elderly couple wearing a bowler hat and sunbonnet respectively, for that was all she could see of them, and a businessman in a frock coat and trousers who eyed them suspiciously before returning to his paper. Further up the car, four cowboys played poker, smoking thin cigarettes as they talked and laughed over their cards. The train rolled forward under the hiss of steam and a sharp cry from its whistle, gathering power as its wheels churned and chugged. Roxie's sense of adventure returned in a rush, her sadness at leaving her family plowed under like a weed. Ella changed seats so they both could stare eagerly out the window as their West Virginia home quickly dropped behind them. The train picked up speed, faster than a horse could gallop, and the farms and fields sped by in a near blur. "This is so exciting," Ella whispered, not wanting to disturb their fellow passengers. "Yes, it is," Roxie agreed, unable to halt her stares. The train moved so fast. "Come." Ella turned away from the window and sat down. "I'm famished. How about we eat some lunch?" Over the course of the week that the train took them across the country toward Wyoming, it stopped frequently to allow passengers off and to permit others on. The elderly couple exited in Ohio, while the cowboys departed in Nebraska. In Kentucky, a middle-aged, somewhat emaciated woman embarked, and later told the girls she had tuberculosis and was moving west to preserve her lungs. Both Roxie and Ella avoided her. Yet, they never ceased to be awed by the passing sights, particularly the vast herds of buffalo on the undulating prairie, herds so huge they covered the horizon for as far as the eye could see. Small family groups of pronghorn antelope loped away from the noise of the train, and flocks of birds rose up to darken the sky only to land further away. Roxie grew accustomed to sleeping sitting up, lulled by the steady rocking of the train. Raised to be kind and generous to others, she often shared their food with others who weren't so fortunate as to bring a box of supplies along. She and Ella found their kindness repaid when a mother with 3 children offered them sweet cakes from her stores. Yet, as eager as they were, Roxie and Ella soon grew fatigued and snappish with each other as the long days and nights ran into each other and never seemed to end. Chapter 6. At long last, the train slowed to a stop in the small village of Plum River, Wyoming. Gathering their belongings and the last of their food stores, Roxie and Ella staggered off the train, numb with exhaustion. The station master emerged from his building, checking his pocket watch, as the crew unloaded the bags belonging to those passengers who disembarked. A small crowd gathered to greet the train, asking for news, seeking those they came to meet. "Who is supposed to meet us?" Ella asked, sinking to a bench beside the station. Roxie joined her, their belongings on the floorboards at their feet. "I don't know," Roxie replied, gazing around, searching for anyone who might be searching for them. "I sent telegrams saying when we'd be here, but I didn't get replies before departing." With a sinking feeling, Roxie watched the crowd disperse. The station master returned to his office, and still no one had arrived to claim them or show them to a place where they might stay. Roxie had enough money to ask for a room at the hotel if it wasn't too expensive. And Ella had confided in her during the trip that she took what was left of Martin's money, almost $100. According to their mail-order bride arrangement, they would be reimbursed for their trip by the 2 men chosen to be their husbands. All they had were the men's names. She and Ella had taken a risk to be sure, one that seemed enormous now that they were there. Roxie wondered at herself. How had she been so trusting of complete strangers? How could this possibly end well? The sun began its westering descent, and she knew they couldn't sit there all night. As Ella rose to ask the station master the way to the hotel, a young man looking to be in his middle 20s hurried up the wide dirt main street of the town. In Roxie's eyes, he was very good-looking in a happy-go-lucky sort of way. He owned shaggy reddish-gold hair, bright hazel-green eyes and a wide, cheerful smile. "Miss Roxie Mills?" he asked, stopping at the station porch. He doffed his wide-brimmed hat. "Yes? I'm Roxie. I am so happy you're here," he said, his smile even wider, walking to her. He took her hand in his. "I'm Curtis Luna." Roxie gave a start despite her recognition of his name. He was the man she had supposedly come here to marry. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Luna. This is my friend, Ella Bennett. She has not yet received word from her intended husband." "No?" An expression of puzzlement crossed his features. "Well, I'm happy to say I can assist you, ma'am. I will escort you to the local boarding house. It's much cheaper than the hotel. From there we can find her husband-to-be." Ella smiled at him. "Thank you, sir. That would be most appreciated. There is a porter. I'll get him to help with your bags." He vanished into the office, and returned a few minutes later followed by an oldish man with a gray beard down to his chest and a pipe clenched between his teeth. He merely grunted when Roxie and Ella offered their thanks and picked up 3 bags in each hand. He may be old, Roxie thought, but he's very strong. As Mr. Luna carried the rest of their things, leaving Roxie and Ella with nothing save their small handbags, he chatted easily about the town. "I own the mercantile store. Well, one of 2. As the town has grown, there's been a need for more merchants. I came here from New Jersey 2 years ago. Now, I feel it's time to marry and start a family." As he spoke, his eyes latched onto Roxie's. Her heart cringed within her chest. Mr. Luna was a nice man, and here she'd led him to believe she came west to marry him. Lord forgive me. At that moment, she heartily disliked herself. What she was doing to both Ella and Mr. Luna was very wrong. Yet, she'd felt she'd had no choice. Her friend's life depended upon her. As they walked, she only half listened to his talk, ensconced as she was in her guilt and weariness. Mr. Luna and the elderly porter took their belongings into the boarding house, a large white-painted house with cheery curtains at the windows. A slender woman with a pleasant face greeted them as the porter dropped their bags on the carpet. Roxie dug into her handbag for a coin, and put it in his hand, hoping it was enough. Perhaps it was, for the man tipped his hat to her and departed quickly on the scent of his pipe. "Mrs. Donovan," Mr. Luna said, removing his hat, "this here is Miss Ella Bennett, who came from West Virginia to marry Mr. Dan Ellison," Ella said quickly. "Ah, yes, I know the man," the woman said in a thick Irish brogue. "He gave me a message for you, lass. He wanted so much to be here to meet you, but he was forced by circumstance to go on a cattle drive. Unfortunately, he may not return for a month." "A month?" Roxie's heart echoed Ella's despair. She needed to see Ella married, happy and settled before she could return home. Now what was she to do? A month was a long time to linger in a strange town amongst people she didn't know. She felt Mr. Luna's eyes on her, a heavy weight she couldn't bear. Now, lass," Mrs. Donovan said, putting her arm around Ella's shoulders. "I'm to see you comfortable in a room here. And feed you. You be too thin, lass, too thin. I will have you nicely plump for your wedding. I plan to stay here, as well." Until she could figure out a way to return home and leave Ella here to be married, Roxie needed somewhere to stay. Perhaps they could save money by sharing a room. "Of course, dear, of course. Mr. Luna, thank you for bringing them. If you be so kind as to carry their luggage up the stairs for them." Their rooms held small beds, a washstand, and a single chair, all plain but clean and comfortable. What Mrs. Donovan quoted for a month's rent gave Roxie hope that she wouldn't run out of money anytime soon. Nor would she be forced to share with Ella, although that prospect hadn't bothered her much even though the beds were very small. "Breakfast be at 7, dinner at noon, and supper at 6, the landlady went on, opening doors to 2 rooms side by side. "I be going over the house rules with you after you've settled in. Mr. Luna, thank you for your help. These girls are obviously exhausted and need their rest." Thus firmly informed he should leave, Mr. Luna grinned at Roxie and tipped his hat. "I look forward to seeing you on the morrow, Miss Mills. I'll be in my shop. Please drop by. We have things to discuss." "Thank you. I'll try to do so." With a short bow to Ella and Mrs. Donovan, he departed, his boots clumping down the stairs. "Now then," Mrs. Donovan said. "It's already after supper, but I can perhaps fix you small plates." "Thank you, ma'am," Ella said. "However, I'm not hungry. Really. I'd like to wash and then go to bed if it's all right with you." "Me, too," Roxie added, feeling more tired than she had ever felt before. "I'm nearly asleep on my feet. You look it." "Very well, I'll bring up warm water for you. You can unpack tomorrow." "Thank you," Roxie and Ella said in unison. Mrs. Donovan chuckled. "Best friends, eh? I know best friends when I do see them." After she returned downstairs, they dragged their luggage into their respective rooms to unpack. By the time Mrs. Donovan arrived with water, Roxie was almost too weary to clean her face and hands before crawling into bed. For a long while, she lay there in the dark, too many nights of sleeping upright to the sway of the train making her unable to find lying down comfortable again. But her exhaustion overwhelmed her and she finally slept deeply, without dreaming. Chapter 7. Mrs. Donovan's house rules were simple: mind your manners, be on time for meals, no male companions anywhere in the house save the drawing room. Her male boarders also received the same rules, except no women with them save the drawing room. As Roxie had no plans to entertain Mr. Luna, the guidelines were easy enough and quite fair. After breakfast, Roxie and Ella finished unpacking and settling into their rooms. Feeling rested and with improved spirits, they donned sun hats with ribbons under their chins for a walk out into the town. Men on horseback or on foot tipped hats to them, and the women that passed them smiled. Roxie saw a few children playing and wondered about the number of men in Plum River needing wives. Your future husband is very handsome, Roxie, Ella said. It was on the tip of her tongue to suggest Ella marry him and forget the absent Dan Ellison. But she merely asked, "You think so?" "Oh, indeed I do. You two are a match." Roxie glanced at her, askance. "Why do you say that?" Ella laughed. "You seem so much alike. Carefree, fun-loving, always smiling." At that moment, Roxie thought she'd never smile again. Besides, Ella's pronouncement was ridiculous. How could she possibly know a thing about Mr. Luna? She'd met him for only a minute the day before. Ella went on. "I hope Mr. Ellison is as handsome as your Mr. Luna. And I hope he looks at me the way Mr. Luna looks at you." "Of course, he will," Roxie said, her tone urgent. She would say anything to halt her tongue from the confession that almost bubbled forth. "You are very beautiful, Ella. And he will love you till the end of his days." Ella smiled shyly. "You are always encouraging. Always paying me compliments I don't deserve." Whatever Roxie might have replied failed to appear as Ella paused, gazing upward. Roxie followed her eyes. "Luna Mercantile and Dry Goods," Ella read aloud. "Come on. We need to go in so you can talk to him. Get to know him." "Wait, I don't think." Ella seized her hand in an unbreakable grip, and all but dragged Roxie into the store. A small bell over the door tinkled merrily, announcing customers to the proprietor. Curtis Luna glanced up from where he assisted a young cowboy in choosing between a pale red cotton shirt or a blue one exactly like it. His smile bloomed like the sun bursting through clouds, and despite her misery, Roxie couldn't help but smile back. He was charming, she had to admit to herself. "Be right with you, ladies." As they perused bolts of cloth, Ella talked of wedding gowns. Roxie wanted to hitch up her skirts and run. Shaking, she felt ill inside, her guilt at her deception of not one but two people, her dilemma about going home and leaving Ella there, all adding to her confusion over the man she allegedly came west to marry. The emotions knotted into her belly like a large rock, bulky and painful. After he sold the cowboy both shirts, and the man departed to the music of the bell, Mr. Luna walked over to them. "Greeting, ladies, on this fine day. I'm so happy you came to visit, Miss Mills. Did you find the boarding house acceptable?" Roxie could barely look at him but forced herself to meet his eyes and smile. "Oh, yes. Mrs. Donovan is wonderful. Thank you for recommending it. It's the only suitable place for two young women," he said, his hazel eyes bright. "Mrs. Donovan is a dragon when it comes to single ladies staying under her roof. Nothing can get past her breath of flame." Both Roxie and Ella laughed at his jest, and he laughed with them. "Come. Sit. Permit me to offer you tea." It's not often when a man's intended bride walks into his establishment. He bowed to Ella, grinning. And accompanied by such a beautiful maiden. Roxie couldn't help but like him. As they sat where he indicated and he hurried into the back room, Ella whispered. "You're so lucky. He obviously is very prosperous. A very good catch for you." Though Roxie wanted to reap the admiration her friends sent her way, she couldn't help but remember that Sam was also handsome and a good catch with excellent future prospects. Not to mention, her father wanted that match. They drank hot, delicious tea, and talked with Curtis regarding his business and the town. Roxie found she truly liked him, and if she weren't determined to return home and marry Sam, she might have found herself looking forward to marrying him. He had an easy way about him, and Roxie felt comfortable in his presence. Nothing in his manner triggered her instincts of danger or threat. But as their talk turned toward her home in West Virginia, Roxie remembered Mrs. Donovan's rules. Noon was but minutes away. She stood up abruptly. "I'm so sorry, but we have to go. Mrs. Donovan will be serving dinner soon. Thank you for the tea." "Wait," he asked, his hand on her arm. "May I escort you to dinner tonight? There is a lovely cafe not far from here." Roxie felt the urge to say no, to avoid him until she could safely leave Plum River. But he was so eager, so hopeful, that she found herself agreeing. That would be nice. 6 o'clock? Mr. Luna beamed. 6, it is. I'll come to the boarding house to fetch you. She smiled back. I'm looking forward to it. Nicely done, Ella murmured as they walked back out onto the street. Oh, dear God, Roxie thought in despair. What have I done? Chapter 8. Mr. Luna arrived at the boarding house promptly as 6, wearing a light gray coat over a white pressed shirt and black wool trousers. His black boots shone with polish, his hair still damp from a washing. He doffed his hat as Roxie walked down the stairs with Mrs. Donovan. The thin matron eyed him with an air of concern mixed with respect, as though wondering if a chaperone might be necessary. Apparently, the dragon in her decided Curtis Luna could be allowed to escort Roxie to dinner without one. I expect Miss Roxie to be returned by 8 o'clock sharp, she said, her brogue thick with firmness. He grinned and bowed. And so, she shall, Mrs. Donovan. Roxie wore one of her best dresses, a pink and white dress tied with darker pink ribbons on the sleeves. Her small formal hat decorated with pink roses was held in place with pins in her hair, and she blushed under his admiring scrutiny. May I offer you a sincere compliment, Miss Roxie? He asked. Blushing, Roxie nodded. You are by far the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Even Mrs. Donovan's brow rose at his words. Roxie had nothing to say, her mouth felt numb, and she half wondered if she could make intelligent conversation with him over supper. Gently pushing Roxie forward, Mrs. Donovan said, Off with you now. I must feed the others. They are waiting on me. Mr. Luna placed Roxie's arm in his and put his hat back on. As they walked out the door and down the street, Roxie felt as though he treated her as he would a queen. Respectful, kind, considerate, and above all honorable. Without a chaperone, she should have felt nervous, anxious about his intentions. Despite her mother's dire warnings of stepping out with a man without a chaperone, she never once considered that his goals for the evening were anything less than what they were. He didn't say much during the walk to the cafe, and Roxie had no idea how to start a conversation with him. While she felt slightly awkward, his comfortable manner made conversation seem unimportant. Content to walk with her arm in his, she wondered how it could be that she felt any measure of ease with a man she met only the day before. The cafe held a few dining patrons, a few cowboys at a nearby table and other men in charcoal coats murmuring in quiet conversation at another, while the town marshal and one of his deputies, badges prominent on their chests, ate their meal in the far corner. She and Mr. Luna were the only couple. The proprietor, a short, stubby man with a bald scalp and clean apron, hustled forward to greet them. Ah, welcome, Mr. Luna, he said expansively, offering Roxie a short bow. Please come this way. What a lovely lady you have on your arm. Welcome, miss. Thank you, Mr. Abrams, Curtis replied, smiling down at Roxie. This is Miss Roxie Mills, my future bride. What a handsome couple you make, Mr. Abrams gushed as Roxie gave him a small curtsy. Congratulations to you both. Here, sit, both of you. Our special tonight is a lamb stew with carrots, beans, and my own garden squash. Seasoned to perfection, of course. As the consummate gentleman, Mr. Luna pulled out a chair for Roxie, while Roxie's face heated under his attention. She blushed harder under the scrutiny of those at the other tables. No doubt they had overheard the exchange, but whether their stares indicated admiration or something else she had no idea. Trying to ignore them as best she could, she smiled, self-conscious, as Mr. Luna placed his hat on the corner of the table before sitting down opposite her. He leaned forward, his eyes bright and his smile gleaming under the light of the lamps. I confess, Roxie, may I call you Roxie? At her nod, he went on. Please call me Curtis, or even Kurt. I confess I feel I am the luckiest man in the world. No, please. But I am, though, he insisted. When I asked for a bride to be sent, I feared a cross-eyed, buck-toothed close cousin of a gargoyle would arrive. Instead, you came. He made a face and dropped his tongue for emphasis, grinning, making Roxie giggle despite the heaviness in her heart. Curtis. He leaned across the table and took her hand. I took the liberty of arranging for us to be married the day after tomorrow. Is that acceptable to you? Unable to look at him, Roxie's eyes stung with tears. He must have seen something in her face, for his fingers tightened and his voice, when he spoke, sounded anxious. Is that too soon? If so, I can delay it, make arrangements for when you are ready. I must make a confession, Curtis. She choked, not wanting him to see her tears. I have done something terrible. What is it? He asked. Look at me. There's nothing you could do to make me angry. She met his honest gaze. Even if I tell you I can't marry you? He blanched. What? Mr. Abrams arrived then with 2 plates of steaming stew, setting them on the table along with glasses of cool tea. Let me know how else I may serve you, he said, bowing his way away from them. Fiddling with her fork, Roxie waited while the silence between them stretched. Finally, she knew she must clarify. I must tell you this, Curtis. I only came here to help Ella get married. Then I'm going back to West Virginia. And lead me along by the nose? Roxie bit her lip at his cold, angry tone. Though he kept his voice pitched low, his face was flushed with clear hurt and confusion. His hazel green eyes darkened with emotion. May I explain? I wish you would. Ella is my best friend, she began, tasting her stew to postpone her difficult words, but the ice in her belly didn't allow her to enjoy the flavor. She could hardly swallow. When her husband died, it was very hard on her. But when she lost their property to her brother-in-law, she wanted to die. As she spoke, Curtis's eyes held steady on her, and his angry expression softened slightly, but only slightly. He didn't touch his supper. I thought to get her out here to marry a good man, Roxie went on. But she wouldn't go without me. Did you deceive her, too? Nodding and guilt-ridden, Roxie held in her tears. She didn't want him to think she wept to gain sympathy, for she deserved none. I will beg her forgiveness, as I must beg yours. I came here to see her wed, then I must return home. I didn't expect you to be so gullible. She met his level gaze. Nice. Curtis finally shunted his eyes away from hers and took a sip of his tea. He sighed heavily. Eat, Roxie. I suppose I must admire you for wanting to help your friend. I am more than disappointed, though. If I turned out to be an old and bitter man, it would have been easy for you to say no and walk away, is that it? Yes, she said slowly, taking small bites of the wonderful lamb, but she wasn't hungry. I do owe you my most sincere apology, and believe me, I feel terrible about it all. But I'd feel much worse if I stood back and let Ella fade away completely from life. Curtis chewed thoughtfully. You're loyal. I'll give you that. What will you do? He chuckled ruefully, a sound that held little humor. Get over you, I expect. Then write for another bride. And pray the gargoyle's cousin doesn't arrive. Chapter 9. Roxie slowly climbed the stairs to her room. Mrs. Donovan emerged from the drawing room, accepting Roxie's smile and small wave as assurance that Curtis behaved as a gentleman should. But the woman didn't speak, something for which Roxie felt eternal gratitude. Before she entered her room, however, Ella opened her door. She was garbed in her nightgown, her hair braided for sleep. Roxie tried to smile, but she knew this time she failed. Ella's expression changed from welcome to concern. What's wrong? She whispered, likely out of respect for the other sleeping guests. Waving her into her room, Roxie quietly shut the door. I have to talk to you, Ella. All right. Ella sat in the chair while Roxie, too restless to sit on the bed, paced. I've done a bad thing, Ella. To both you and Curtis. Her fingers stroking her braid, Ella merely waited. She was ever the patient one. I came with you on a pretext, Ella, Roxie said, tears flowing down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. I hope you can forgive me, but I'll understand if you don't. What pretext? And sit down. You're making me nervous with all that pacing. Roxie obeyed, seating herself opposite Ella on the edge of the bed. "I was so afraid you'd die. I agreed to come here with you to help you get married. Then I planned to go home. I want to marry Sam." Ella shook her head and gave a small smile. "Oh, Roxie. I suspected as much. I put a lot of pressure on you." Roxie bounded to her feet. "I deceived you, Ella. I deceived Curtis. Now he's angry and hurt that I came here and raised his hopes that I'd marry him. Now, I've destroyed his dream." She wheeled on Ella. "And don't deny what I've done is a sin." Ella parted her thumb and finger a fraction apart. "A small one. And for a good reason. I think God will have little trouble forgiving you. Will you?" "I already have." Fresh tears flowed at Ella's words. "I can't stay here, Ella. I've hurt that good man badly. I'm going home as soon as possible." "Then I'm going with you." "No." Roxie spun around, her skirts swirling. "We sacrificed so much for you to come and be married to Mr. Ellison. You have an obligation." "An obligation to what?" "He's not here, is he? Had he any decency, he'd have been here to meet and marry me. Instead, he's gone to God knows where on a cattle drive." Roxie paced again. "Ella, you must stay here. Mrs. Donovan will look after you. We're in this together, Roxie. Thick or thin. Where you go, I go. If you leave without me, I'll follow you." Sinking to her bed, Roxie felt an utter disgrace, indeed a failure, to Ella, to Curtis, to herself. The bed dipped as Ella sat beside her, her hand stroking her hair. "Don't cry, Roxie. I know you did it all for me, and I appreciate and love you for it. All the more reason we shouldn't be separated, not now. I know now how foolish and selfish I've been, wanting to die because Martin did. And because his wretched brother wanted my home. Because of you, I'm stronger now. But you remain my dearest friend, and we shall remain together." Roxie hugged her tightly. "Then we go home together." The next day, Roxie and Ella stared at the trainmaster in shock. "What do you mean, no train for a month?" He pulled out his pocket watch, glanced at it, and blew out from beneath his thick mustache an impatient gush of air. "Just what I said, miss. The next train heading east won't be here for at least 4 weeks. Perhaps longer. There are repairs being made to the tracks. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have paperwork that needs done." He herded them outside, and shut the door, leaving them to stare at one another. "Now, what do we do?" Ella asked. Roxie all but collapsed on the bench. "Unless we plan to walk 2,000 miles home, we've no choice. We wait." Ella took her hand. "Maybe it won't be so bad. We can explore the town, spend time with Mrs. Donovan, enjoy ourselves like when we were girls. I don't have much money, Ella. What I'll pay for room and board is what the ticket will cost. Now, you don't worry about that. I'll take care of you. Why don't we go tell Mrs. Donovan what's happening?" While their Irish landlady smiled broadly at the announcement they would be staying for a month, she eyed Roxie sidelong with a raised brow. True to her heritage, she didn't hesitate to ask why Roxie was refusing to marry the man who was deemed the best catch in town. "What be the trouble, lass? Did he have bad breath?" Flummoxed, Roxie told her the truth. She had no intention of marrying in Plum River and had only come to see Ella settled and happy. Mrs. Donovan nodded. "I applaud your loyalty, lass, and your honor. But you be letting the best bachelor in town escape you. You do be better off remaining here and marry the lad." Roxie dropped her eyes. "But I'm obligated to marry my father's apprentice." Mrs. Donovan stroked a gentle finger down Roxie's arm. "A proper muddle, that is. But you do be here, and yon apprentice a long way off. Curtis Luna be a good man, and fathers have a way of forgiving daughters for marrying what their hearts desire." On that, the woman walked regally into the drawing room, leaving the two to gape after her. Chapter 10. Despite her determination not to see Curtis, to avoid the embarrassment and the hurt she caused him. Running into him seemed almost predestined, and rather too often for it to be coincidence. Mrs. Donovan asked the girls to run to Luna Mercantile for her. She needed thread one day, buttons the next. Then, oh my goodness, she forgot that she needed a yard of lace, and would they be so good as to fetch it for her? She had an account with Mr. Luna. While neither Roxie nor Ella were fooled for a moment, they hadn't the heart to deny Mrs. Donovan her whimsical notions. Yet, even if their landlady hadn't sent them to his store, Roxie seemed to run into Curtis everywhere. If she walked down the street, it was inevitable that he would be walking the other way. At any of these meetings, engineered or accident, Roxie always offered him her smile and a downcast face. It wasn't that she played a game. It was simply fair that she not lead him on, or so she thought. For his part, Curtis treated her with distant respect, his smiles for her both warm and sad. Yet, she couldn't help but notice his expression brightened whenever he saw her. "I hope you are well, Curtis," she said, when once again, Mrs. Donovan sent her on an errand. "Yes, I am, Roxie," he answered. "Thank you for asking. May I ask you something?" "Of course. I thought you would have returned home by now." Roxie felt herself flush to her hairline. "The train won't arrive for weeks." "I see." She thought she heard him also say, "Good," but whether the word was intended to be sarcastic or heartfelt, she had no idea. Instead, she gathered Mrs. Donovan's current necessity and hurried out. The next time she walked through his door and asked for a yard of pale blue wool that Mrs. Donovan needed for a dress she wanted to make, Roxie had a question of her own. "Did you, send for another bride?" Curtis glanced up from cutting the cloth. "Yes, I did." "Oh." She wasn't prepared for the lightning stab of jealousy that speared her. It was almost as though she'd been struck in the heart with an arrow. Yet, she told herself sternly, "I'm leaving. What do I care?" His decision haunted her in the deep dark of the night when sleep failed her. She tossed and turned on her narrow bed, cold one minute, hot the next. "I like him," she thought restlessly. "He means nothing to me. Of course, it was right that he sent for another. And I'm leaving. What will his new bride be like? I don't care, I want to marry Sam." When at last she slept, she dreamt of a happy-go-lucky grin, gleaming eyes, and tousled red gold hair. She often dreamt of children with auburn hair and fractious grins. She dreamt of chasing them through their mischievous shenanigans, laughing and hugging them, happy in her love for Curtis. Then she'd waken in the darkness before dawn with cold sweat trickling down her ribcage. "I'm to marry Sam," she'd say to herself over and over. "I'm to marry Sam. I'm to marry Sam." Her refrain deserted her as the bell over the door tinkled its happy song when she next went to his shop. Her heart lifted at the sight of him, smiling as he assisted a customer, laughing as he bent to offer a child a lollipop. She broke into a sweat upon seeing his infectious grin include her as though they were intended to marry after all. Then the cold truth descended. She'd told him no. He planned to marry another. It was done. If she should attempt to undo what she had done, to tell him yes, that she'd changed her mind, it would destroy even more lives. There was a woman even now traveling west, her sights set on marrying Curtis, the town's most eligible bachelor. How many more people's happiness must she destroy by thinking of herself? Ella, God bless her, stood unyielding by her side. When Roxie collapsed into tears, Ella held her close. When Roxie raged against her own fickleness, Ella offered words of comfort and forgiveness. Without Ella there, Roxie knew she'd be left wallowing alone. It didn't occur to her until much later as to how their roles had suddenly reversed. 2 weeks after their dinner at the cafe, Roxie braced herself as she encountered Curtis on the sidewalk early one pleasant evening. He doffed his hat, smiling down at her. She wanted to take his hand, press his fingers and feel his warmth, but he belonged to another now. She had no right. "How are you, Curtis?" she inquired, attempting a stiff formality. Inside, she shuddered with sudden cold. "I am well, Miss Roxie." "And you?" Her heart quailed at his use of the title Miss. That meant he'd moved on. Dismissed her. Planned for a future with his new bride-to-be. Perhaps he'd ask his new girl to dinner at the cafe. She clenched her fists. Quite well, thank you. His eyes flickered. Startled, she half wondered if she imagined that swift there-and-gone glance of longing. Of course, she had imagined it. He had no true feelings for her. Why would he? He barely knew her. Well, I must be going, she said brightly, concealing her pain behind a vapid smile. I hope your new bride arrives soon. As she made to walk on, Curtis caught her arm. Do you mean that? Roxie hesitated. Oh, of course. Why wouldn't I? But her tone did not prove her words, and she feared he heard the truth behind her sentiment. She broke free of his grip and hurried down the street, trying in vain to halt her tears. How could God have let her travel to Wyoming territory and fall in love with a man she could never have? No, I didn't see love and longing in his hazel eyes, she told herself. He could never love her, not after what she did to him. Not ever. Chapter 11. Ella sighed. Admit it, Roxie. You love him. No, I don't. She bit through the thread she'd knotted on the dress she darned. It had ripped when she tripped over the hem, the lace trailing in the dirt and dust. Once sewed and brushed, the gown would look as good as new. We leave in a week. And your beau has never arrived at all. What does that have to do with how you love Curtis, Luna? Roxie flicked her a swift glance. Nothing, I suppose. His new bride will most probably be on the first train that arrives. It's high time we went home, Ella. I won't hear another word about it. Ella leaned forward, her eyes bright. What word? You're the only one denying anything, Roxie. For goodness sakes, you're refusing to see what's in front of your eyes. Don't exaggerate, Ella. I'm not. Even Mrs. Donovan sees it. Sees what? Ella snorted. If I weren't a lady, I'd slap your face to wake you up. Now, you're talking foolishness. No, Roxie, you are. You are telling yourself that you don't love Curtis. That's called lying to yourself. You love him, and he loves you. Roxie snorted. You're being fanciful. Open your eyes, silly girl. Roxie started at the vehemence in Ella's tone. She never raised her voice. Not ever. Ella. What's done is done. He has a new bride coming. If what you say is true, how can I interfere now? He is pledged to marry another. That's not true, you know. Ella's voice held firm, obvious anger simmering below the surface. He can call off the wedding with the new girl at any time. How do you know that? Ella's nose lifted, and she gazed down it imperiously. I just do. I also happen to know that the new girl is not taking the first train here. There's time. Setting down her sewing, Roxie stood and paced. But I heard him, Ella. Why would he trust me again? He doesn't love me, he has no reason to. I deceived him by coming here. He'll never forgive me. Have you tried asking? That halted her pacing. Well. I take that as a no. Roxie resumed her stride, waving her arms. And if I did ask forgiveness, and he laughs in my face? Then I expect I'll have my answer, won't I? And if he forgives you and asks you to marry him? Roxie halted, suddenly unsure of herself. That won't happen. It won't if you don't try. Ella. The train arrives in 4 days. We have until then to buy tickets home. And you have until then to make your peace with Curtis. The next time Mrs. Donovan sent Roxie to Curtis's store for another item, she held her breath, waiting for the other customers to leave. Once she was alone with him, she stared deep into his hazel eyes from across the counter. His mouth opened as though to speak, but another customer walked in, the bell ringing its musical note. Embarrassed and her face hot, Roxie turned away and walked out the door. It's not going to work, she complained to Ella 2 nights later. I've done too much damage. I can't get him alone to talk to him, and I doubt he wants to talk to me anyway. Try harder. Roxie blew out her breath on a deep sigh and glared at her best friend. It's over, Ella. We're getting on that train the day after tomorrow. Ella merely sipped her tea and smiled. Are we? Chapter 12. Roxie packed her few belongings in the bag she arrived with, preparing for her long journey on the morrow. Her heart heavy, she tried to imagine her future happiness with Sam, a familiar man in a familiar setting, her parents and younger sisters looking on with approval. Yet, when she gazed into her future, she saw Curtis's face, not Sam's. Her children had their father's red gold hair, not black. But she'd gone too far, she knew. She owed Curtis that much, happiness with a woman who hadn't broken his heart. I don't deserve him, she decided. She remembered his disappointment and hurt and knew she had destroyed her integrity with him. The best thing she could do for Curtis was get out of his life. Roxie, lass, can you run to the mercantile and fetch me pins? I thought I had plenty to get me though this dress, but it seems I've run out. In the boarding house kitchen and under Ella's smirk, Roxie sighed. Yes, Mrs. Donovan. She rose from her chair and walked to the doorway. Coming, Ella? Why no, Roxie. I have to fix the lace on my petticoat before we travel. I'm sure you'll be fine by yourself. As Roxie let herself out, she knew she heard giggles behind her. She just knew it. While cursing was unladylike and beneath her, Roxie suddenly understood the need to grumble under her breath. Her own spiteful thoughts lasted until she walked through the mercantile doorway, its chimes announcing her presence. She almost heard the bells say, "You don't belong, you are an interloper. Go away." She ignored the silent voices and strode firmly into Curtis's domain as though she belonged there. As he didn't appear right away, Roxie took a moment to glance around at the neat shelves, the merchandise displayed to maximize sales, the prosperity of the place. During her weeks in Plum River, she knew that folks tended to buy from Curtis rather than his competitor down the road. Though she had only gone through the doors to that other store once, she'd heard whispers through town that Curtis gave better weight in trade and lower prices on his merchandise. His honesty and integrity weren't just rumors, but truth in fact. At least, according to the townspeople who regularly bought from him, anyway. Roxie suddenly saw herself helping Curtis run his business, a partner as well as wife, assisting customers, buying from wholesalers, giving good trade from the local ranchers and farmers. I'd love it, she thought, as she waited for him to emerge from the back room. He gave fair value for goods, selling those goods at a better price to those in need, helping folks who had little to pay to advance their fortunes. Curtis is a God-fearing man. Hello, Miss Roxie. She spun around, her face growing hot. Hello, Mr. Luna. His brow raised at her sudden formality, Curtis came around from behind the corner and walked toward her. He stopped a few feet away, at the social requisite distance between mere acquaintances. Why that should bother her, she had no idea. But it did. His eyes didn't quite hide a strange emotion. What was it? A flicker of something, yearning perhaps? Confusion? I came to get some pins for Mrs. Donovan, she said, her voice sounding hoarse to her own ears. Of course. Turning to a sideboard with many drawers, Curtis opened one and took out a small packet. Roxie walked to him, closing the distance. When he turned back around, she stood directly in front of him. He gave a start, then a tiny smile crossed his lips. He opened her hand, placed the packet in it, then closed her fingers. For a long moment, she stared deeply into his eyes, his hands still on hers, and this time she recognized what it was that she had seen earlier, his heart. Curtis, she began. Hush, he murmured. Bending his head, he placed a light, tender kiss on her lips. Closing her eyes, Roxie leaned into it, wanting more, breathing in his heady male scent, sensing his strength. She moved closer, inviting. The bell chimed. Panicked, Roxie broke and spun away. Tears of mortification and self-consciousness spilled down her cheeks, and she brushed past the tall man who held the door for her. She barely recognized the town marshal and didn't thank him or acknowledge him. Walking fast, she all but trotted down the wooden sidewalk to the boarding house. Inside, her sobs hitching in her chest, she put the pins down on a table in the drawing room and fled upstairs. Roxie? She ignored Ella and ran to her room. Locking the door behind her, she fell onto her bed, weeping. She didn't come out until the next morning. Chapter 13. Despite her lack of sleep, Roxie felt composed and determined. Today, she would be going home. Her bags were packed, and she carried them down one at a time to place beside the door for the porter to collect. Ella's were already there, and Ella herself stood just outside the door in the morning sunlight. Mrs. Donovan emerged from the kitchen with a basket. "Can't be seeing you go without making sure you be fed on the journey," she said, setting the heavy hamper down next to their things. Roxie pressed money into her hand. "Thank you so much for everything, Mrs. Donovan. I'll never forget you or your kindness." The tall woman gazed down at her. "I be thinking you make a bad mistake, lass. But it be yours to make. I'll not stop you from leaving." Roxie nodded and went out the door. Ella glanced at her, her face impassive. "We have time before the train comes." "Time for what?" Ella gazed back out at the nearly empty street. "Saying goodbye for one." Roxie's throat closed. She said nothing. An hour or so later, as they stood and waited, not speaking, the elderly porter, his pipe clamped between his lips and his beard waving in the light breeze, stomped down the street toward them. In the distance, the train's whistle sounded, smoke from its stack curling upward from beyond the town's buildings. Roxie could contain herself no longer. Wheeling, hiking her skirts, Roxie ran down the street. Past men hurrying on to their business, with some turning to stare after her. She took no notice. Only seeing Curtis mattered. Her stout shoes thumped on the wooden walk, and her breath gasped from her lungs. Bursting through Curtis's door, she slammed it shut before the bell finished its announcement. Curtis glanced up from perusing a catalog. "Roxie?" Tears and sobs erupted before her throat shut down. "I can't do it," she choked, stumbling toward him. "I can't leave. I love you." His strong arms caught her before her knees gave out. Her hands crept around his neck as once more he bent to kiss her. This time it wasn't a sweet, tender kiss, all his soul went into it. His passion, his love, his longing swept her away in that single kiss. She melted against him, breathless and hungry for more. He picked her up in his arms, laughing, kissing her cheeks, her lips, her eyes. "I was hoping you'd come around," he managed around the kisses. "I've loved you since the first moment I saw you." "I've been a fool," she admitted, leaning her cheek against his shoulder. "I'm so sorry I hurt you. Can you forgive me?" "I already have." Roxie nestled against him, feeling happier than she ever thought possible. "Will you marry me?" Gazing up at him, a smile quirked her lips. "Ask me again." "Will you marry me, Roxie, the light of my life? Will you spend the rest of your life making me happy, as I plan to spend mine making you the happiest woman in the world?" "Oh, Curtis," was all she could get out. "Is that a yes?" Roxie nuzzled her nose against his, teasing him. "I will think about it." Another voice piped up. "If you don't say yes right now, Roxie, I will not be responsible for my actions." Both of them jerked their faces toward the door. How Ella and Mrs. Donovan had entered without them hearing, Roxie would never know. But stood there they did, hands on hips, waiting with imperious expressions. "We'll drag you to the altar," Mrs. Donovan declared. Roxie grinned at Curtis. "The oracles have spoken, my love. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll spend my life trying to make you the happiest man in the world." Curtis hooped and kissed her again. "You just did." When he slid her to the floor to stand her on her feet, Roxie felt giddy. "How soon can we be married?" "This afternoon," Mrs. Donovan said. "The good Reverend stands ready at the church." She sniffed. "A good man, even if he isn't Catholic." Roxie gazed up at her husband-to-be. "Then what are we waiting for?" Epilogue. Roxie reread the letter from her parents. They aren't happy with me, she murmured. They'll get over it, Ella stated firmly. Give them time. They are even less happy with Sam, she went on. The minute my telegram arrived informing them of my marriage, Sam announced his plans to step out with Harriet Morgan. Harriet. Ella's outrage made Curtis laugh from where he stood behind the counter. She's a hussy, Ella insisted, fuming. And ugly to boot. She's welcome to him. Roxie gazed at her husband with love shining in her eyes. I caught the most eligible bachelor in Wyoming. Curtis blew her a kiss. And you're learning how to manage the store at an extremely fast rate. It's not hard when I love it so much. Ella cleared her throat. Well, I need to talk to you both. Dan Ellison still hasn't arrived, and I'm beginning to wonder if marrying him is such a good idea. Thus far, he hasn't proved himself to be husband material. I don't know what to do. Move in with us, Ella, Curtis said. We have plenty of room. And it will get you out of paying money to Mrs. Donovan for rent. You can help us here, and I'll pay you a decent wage. Ella's mouth dropped. I never thought. Please accept, Ella, Roxie urged, taking her hands. This will give you time to find a husband, Dan Ellison or not. Ella nodded, her smile bursting forth like the sun. I accept. And thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Roxie embraced her. Come, I'll help you move your things into the spare bedroom. And we'll still be together and the best of friends, Ella. Ella gave her a beautiful smile. Yes, we will, she said, and then added, forever. The end. Thank you for listening to this heartwarming story by Susannah Calloway. You can be assured that all her books are clean and wholesome. To find other romances by Susannah Calloway, as well as the other authors at Tika House Publishing, visit www.tikahousepublishing.com. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next Susannah Calloway Western romance.